The train should have stopped 5 times before I realized the doors never opened. And when I finally reached the conductor, he told me something I still cannot explain. That this train has never had stops. It started like any other night. The only other person I noticed was an older woman in a wide, outdated hat who kept staring at the tracks like she was waiting for something else to come. I thought it was strange, but not strange enough to worry about. I had worked a long shift at the library midnight cataloging, mostly the kind of quiet job I took because I liked being around books more than people. My apartment was on the edge of the city, so I usually caught the 12:05 train at Fulton Station. I boarded like usual, tapping my card and stepping into the car. It was freezing inside. I thought the AC must have been malfunctioning because I could see my breath even in my coat. No announcements. No conductor voice. Nothing. I walked to the front of the car, trying to open the door to the next one. It slid open after some resistance. I kept going forward, car by car, and with each one, the lights were dimmer. The man turned his head just enough to look at me. His face was oddly pale, with sunken cheeks, and his conductor cap sat slightly crooked on his head. The air colder, and the sense of isolation heavier. Just the low, mechanical hum and the occasional flicker of the ceiling lights. But the controls in front of him looked old, really old. Dials and levers instead of a digital dashboard. It was a dull, fluorescent-lit ride with a few regulars, and the occasional half-asleep college kid or night shift worker dozing off. He did not turn. I knocked again, louder, not one. Not even the older woman, but the train did not slow down. That happened sometimes when there were delays. I checked my phone. What do you mean? I ride this route every night. We stop at 7th Avenue, Marlow, Oak Ridge. No service. Maybe taken the night before. A handprint on a window, from the inside, smeared like someone had tried to claw their way out. In one car, the ceiling lights had gone entirely out except for one that strobed, buzzing like an insect's wings. I dropped it, heart racing. Just that empty circle searching endlessly for a signal. The lights in the cabin flickered once, then stayed dim. The train kept rolling. It kept going. I assumed she changed her mind, or maybe boarded a different car. But there was something unsettling about the emptiness. The air inside the train was now thick, hard to breathe. It smelled like damp soil and old iron. Mist crept along the ground, hugging the rails. The train groaned like something alive and slithered back into the mist. One of the seats had something on it, a photograph. That night, the platform was nearly empty when I arrived. No stop. And through them, I no longer saw tunnels or city lights, only trees. I do not know for how long. I just ran until I stumbled onto an access road. An old pickup truck eventually pulled over and gave me a ride. The driver said he had never seen a station anywhere near here, and that the tracks had been abandoned years ago after a derailment. Dense, black, and swaying, like they were underwater. No signs. Just the sound of wind in the branches, and the distant crunch of footsteps, too heavy to be mine, somewhere in the dark behind me. I looked out, expecting to see commuters, or at least dimly lit platform signs, but there was only darkness, like the windows were covered in soot. The train pulled in exactly on time silver, humming low with a flickering interior light in the middle car. And worse, no conductor by that name had ever been employed. There were no other passengers, the kind that echoes across empty places. I picked a seat near the middle, facing the door, and settled in. The train started rolling. The first stop should have been 7th Avenue. Okay, maybe it skipped one. We passed another station. It was not until the third stop flew by that I realized something was really wrong. I stood up and approached the doors, pressing the emergency intercom. I finally reached what should have been the conductor's cabin. There was a narrow window. Through it, I saw a man in uniform. I knocked on the window. The door hissed open slowly. "Sir," I said, trying to sound calm, "I think the doors are malfunctioning. We passed several stops without opening." He stared at me for a moment before replying in a flat, almost mechanical voice. "There are no scheduled stops on this line." I blinked. "There are no stations by those names," he interrupted. "Not on this line. There never have been." I felt my stomach twist. "Where are we going?" His lips twitched into what I think was meant to be a smile. Passengers do not usually ask that. And then he closed the door. I stood there, stunned. When I turned back to return to my car, everything had changed. The floors were damp. The windows were fogged. I picked up my pace. I paused. It was of me, sleeping, in my bed. The image looked recent. Each new car I passed had something more bizarre. A discarded shoe. Then the train began to slow. The screech of brakes was deafening. I stumbled as it jerked to a stop. The doors opened with a hiss. Outside was not a station. It looked like an abandoned stretch of track swallowed by forest. Trees loomed just beyond the gravel. I knew I had two choices: stay on the train or get off into the unknown. I stepped out. The moment my foot touched the gravel, the doors slammed shut. Gone. I was alone. No lights. I ran. When I asked where exactly he found me, he looked confused. "There's nothing out there but forest and swamp." I never found the train again. I even checked transit authority records. According to them, no such line ever existed. But some nights, just before I fall asleep, I hear the faint sound of a train whistle. Not the modern kind, the old ones. I think sometimes it is still out there, and it is waiting for me to board again. There were at least 10 of us on that train car when the lights cut out. But when they came back on, someone or something was missing, and nobody said a word. I had boarded the subway just after 11:30 p.m. My shift at the deli downtown had run late again, and this was the last train home. A collective intake of breath rippled around me. Phones buzzed and screens glowed as riders searched for light. The doors remained closed. The train did not move. Most of the seats were empty, just a few tired souls scattered throughout the car. But when I lifted my phone, the screen stayed dark. No signal. I sat still, not daring to breathe too loud. Instead, I heard only the empty hum of that old metal car and the slow beep of the doors as they clicked into life. The woman across from me had tears pooling in her eyes. Gone. No bag, no coat, no trace. That left shift emptiness felt unnatural, like a wound in the flow of the car. The man near the exit was gripping the rail so tightly his knuckles were white. In the aisle, someone's green hiking backpack lay open, the zipper torn. The doors briefly opened and shut, but no one got on or off. The stairs up felt pressurized, the open air welcoming, though the sky had clouded over with midnight fog. Each one made me thankful not to be trapped again. A little rain started to drizzle, cold and steady. I didn't care. I needed open space. Creaking scrape of something moving too close for comfort, something without a body or a clear form. Something that makes no noise when you're watching. No signal outages reported. I only felt it. I only heard it. And it is still beneath those seats, waiting. Because work requires it, I keep my phone on low brightness, tucked under my coat. I slip my feet onto the seat, watch the space beneath, angle my eyes so any movement there shows up trailing in my peripheral vision. No power failure on the line. No missing travelers. No abandoned bag found. That train went into motion. No one got off. But I know that wasn't true. I feel the breeze of something wet moving behind me, and I cannot look away. Just beneath the floorboards, following me into the open. Some stuck earphones back in. Others slid their fingers against the seats, as though to make sure someone was still next to them. My apartment felt safe, because it felt known. I slept with the lights on, the TV playing static white noise into the dead hours. We began moving again without pause. No one spoke. No one looked at the seat at the far end, where the figure had passed. No one asked where the scraping had come from. Others held their breath too, still wedged in their seats, shuffling second hands at the rail above, testing which light switch could save us. But I was frozen by the sound. The scraping grew louder. I wanted to look at anyone, but no one looked at me. We were all moving forward, eyes forward, silent in fear. I felt the temperature drop, even in that confined space. My ankles ached from pulling them laterally, hugging the seat cushion. No map, no way out. I slid into a seat by the window, earbuds in, half listening to the hum of the tracks. The air felt stale, as it always did underground, and the faint clatter of the wheels against the rails was strangely soothing, lulling me into a near daze. And in the silence, my heartbeat roared in my ears. Then the train lurched and ground to a sudden halt. The overhead lights flickered once, then died completely. The car was swallowed by darkness. From behind, I heard a stifled gasp. Then, footsteps. Slow, deliberate, just behind row after row. Not heavy steps too light for a person trying to stay upright. Like something half slithered and footed at the same time. I pressed against the window, perched ready to spring. The figure passed in front of me. I didn't see it, but I felt it. A flicker at my peripheral vision, like a movement in the reflection that slipped away when I turned. At first, I assumed it was a routine stall. Those happen sometimes, an electrical hiccup, a power surge. Silence gathered in that darkness, thick enough to taste. Then I heard it, the slow, wet scraping just beneath the seats behind me, like a thick cloth dragged across wet concrete. It moved in patches, shifting deeper into the car. The noise crept closer, each scrape distinct in the hush. My chest tightened. The sound passed in front of me, furtive, methodical. It went halfway down the car, then stopped, just scrape. I swallowed hard. Lights came on with an abrupt buzz. I expected the conductor to say something. I scanned the car. The seat at the far end empty. The person who had been reading the paperback? I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but my voice was stuck behind my eyes. That ride felt endless. Every station we passed, the lights changed. I finally got off 2 stops sooner than home. Walking home 3 miles, I passed through wet streets and dimly lit blocks. Windows looked closed, untouchable. At home, I turned on every light, all the taps. I double-checked locks on the doors and windows, but I felt exposed wherever I looked. News said nothing, because every so often, when the power flickers, I freeze. And I can almost hear it again. That's sliding. So now, when I ride the subway again, and I do, because I never saw it clearly, watching, and every time I pass that far corner, I cannot unhear it. She sat there the entire ride, never blinking, never looking away. But when I glanced at the window beside her, there was no reflection, just an empty seat in the glass. I have never liked taking the train at night, especially the late ones. There is something about how empty everything feels. Like you are stuck in a world that most people have already gone to sleep to avoid. Still, I had no choice that evening. The car was nearly empty, just a few people scattered toward the back. I swear she was not there when I first sat down. She had shoulder-length dark hair, pale skin, and wore a beige coat that looked like it belonged to another decade. Her eyes were fixed on me, not just looking locked. She did not glance away once. I picked a window seat in the middle and settled in with my bag at my feet. My headphones were dead, and my phone had about 4% battery left, so I decided to just stare out at the tunnels and get through the 20-minute ride. A last-minute task kept me in the office later than usual, and by the time I reached the station, it was already past 11:30. I boarded the second-to-last northbound train. I rubbed my hands together and breathed warm air into them. There was no reason it should have been that cold. Still nothing. The window beside her reflected the environment perfectly, except for her, as if light refused to touch her. About 3 minutes into the trip, the train passed under a stretch of flickering lights. That was when I noticed her. A woman was sitting directly across from me, in the row facing mine. I did not want to believe the alternative. Just that hollow phrase. No service. The battery dipped to 2%. I tried to play it cool, like I did not notice her. But it is difficult to ignore someone staring at you, especially when they are smiling slightly. Not in a friendly way. In that brief second of darkness, I swear I heard something. But in the window where her reflection should have been, there was absolutely nothing. More like someone who knows something you do not. 5 minutes passed. She had not moved. Her smile remained frozen in place. No blinking, no twitch, just stillness. The longer I sat there, the colder it felt inside the car. I turned my head to look out the window, and that was when I noticed it. The reflection, or rather the lack of one. I could see my own reflection clearly, my eyes, my posture, even the tired slump in my shoulders. I could see the seats behind her, so soft I could barely make out the words. Her row was blank. I blinked several times, leaned forward slightly, and stared harder. My breath caught in my throat. I told myself it must be the lighting, some kind of angle trick. Maybe the coat absorbed light strangely. When I looked back at her, she had tilted her head slightly, as if amused by my reaction. I shot up, grabbing my bag, and bolted toward the connecting door. As I passed her row, I glanced one more time at the window beside her. That smile had widened. I looked away and pulled out my phone, desperate to message someone, but of course, there was no signal underground. I shoved the phone back in my pocket. I live on the 3rd floor. The train screeched slightly as it passed a turn, and the lights overhead flickered again. I sat as far away as I could, still trembling. I stared at the door behind me for the next 10 minutes, praying it would not open, and backward, as if someone pressed their finger from the wrong side of the reflection. Breathing. Not mine. I called a cab instead of walking the 5 blocks home. Not close, right next to me. When the lights came back on, she was no longer in her seat. She was standing, 2 rows closer. Her face unchanged, still staring, still smiling. I wanted to move. I needed to switch cars. But I was paralyzed, frozen by something beyond fear. My body felt like lead. Then the lights flickered again. Longer this time. The car went pitch black for what felt like 5 full seconds. In that darkness, I felt the air shift beside my ear. A whisper. "You are not supposed to see me." The lights came back. She was back in her original seat, sitting, smiling. I could not take it anymore. Still no reflection, not even a shadow. I burst into the next car. A couple of college kids looked up, startled. When the train finally reached my stop, I got off and did not look back once. I told myself that I was just tired, that I imagined it, but it did not end there. That night, as I lay in bed, I kept hearing something faint outside my window, like fingers tapping lightly on the glass. I pulled the curtains open at 3 a.m. Nothing was there. But the next morning, I found a single fingerprint on the outside of the window, long, thin. I have not ridden that train since. I take the bus now. I drive when I can. But sometimes, late at night, I see her in my dreams, sitting, watching. And in those dreams, when I look into any mirror, I no longer see my own reflection, just an empty seat, and the faint outline of a smile. The train was empty when I woke up. No conductor, no passengers, just a static hum and a dimly lit station I had never seen before. and then the payphone started ringing. I was coming back from visiting my sister in Jersey, a late-night trip after a long weekend. I remember finding a quiet seat near the back of the train and putting in my earbuds. No mechanical whirring, no announcements, not even the usual hiss from the doors. Just dead silence. I was exhausted, one of those bone-deep fatigues where your body just gives up. I must have fallen asleep somewhere around Trenton. The train was sitting at a platform, but this was not any station I recognized. I looked back into the train, half expecting anyone to walk in and tell me we were just at some kind of service stop. But the train felt abandoned. I stepped off. There were no signs, no glowing logos or maps. My grip on the receiver tightened. Who is this? My shoes scraped against dirt-covered tile as I made my way toward the phone. With every step I took, the ringing grew louder, but no more urgent, steady, deliberate, like it knew I would answer eventually. Just a long stretch of cracked concrete, old iron benches, and a broken vending machine lying on its side, distorted, like I was looking at it through water. I started running. I remember every word. Get back on before the doors close. If they close, you stay. And the line went dead. Shadows, tall and slow, drifting between the support pillars. At first, I thought they were people. Then I realized they had no faces. Just blurred outlines in the dark, watching. There were no ads on the walls, no posters. Just a single payphone mounted on a concrete pillar, the kind you do not see anymore. And it was ringing. When I opened my eyes, the train was not moving. That alone was not too strange, but what struck me was the silence. I made it to the train, just as the doors hissed, preparing to shut. Transit forums. Urban explorer blogs. There is no mention of that platform. No trace of that payphone. I jumped inside, and the doors sealed behind me with a loud thud. Always the same tone. Always steady. And I know if I ever pick it up again, I will not get back on the train in time. What do you mean? You just came in from the yard. This train was not in service. I could hear movement, faint, dragging footsteps outside the train. Closer. Slow. I looked around. Every seat was empty. No passengers. People. Announcements. Bright lights. I stumbled off, still shaken, and asked one of the staff where we had just come from. No conductor walking through the cars. No signal. Not even the time was displaying correctly. It just blinked 0 o'clock. I sat there, gripping the seat, waiting for any announcement, any sign I was heading back to the real world. The lights came back on, brighter now, almost too bright. I stumbled to my seat, breathing hard, heart pounding in my ears. The station outside began to slide away, but not like any station I had ever seen. It just ended, like the track dropped off into blackness, like it was not supposed to exist. Even the overhead lights felt off, dim, flickering slightly, as if they were trying not to be noticed. I stood up and looked out the window. It echoed across the empty platform like it was meant just for me. I hesitated. The air was heavy, thick with the scent of mildew and something metallic. It was cooler than it should have been for September. I reached out and picked up the receiver. There was no dial tone, just breathing, slow, deep breathing. I said hello twice. Then, just as I was about to hang up, a voice raspy, calm said, "You were not supposed to get off." I froze. No response. "Where am I?" The voice said one last thing, and I swear to you, I turned around. The train's doors were still open, but the lights inside had dimmed further, and something about it looked wrong now. As I moved, I noticed something else shapes beyond the platform. The ground felt like it was getting softer, stickier, like it was pulling at my feet. My lungs burned. Then the lights went out completely. For several long seconds, I stood there in the blackness, Suddenly, the train jolted forward. As the train picked up speed, I checked my phone. Eventually, the train did stop again. This time, it was a normal station. He blinked, confused. I did not argue. I just left. For weeks after, I checked every map I could find. But sometimes, late at night, I hear ringing in my dreams. The speaker crackled to life just after midnight. Do not look at the man in car 7. He can see you now. The train had only 3 cars. Just me and a couple of scattered passengers, all too tired to speak. The usual buzz of the speaker was followed by a calm, emotionless voice, not the usual conductor's. A woman a few rows ahead turned in her seat, clearly just as confused. A man closer to the middle stood and peeked through the window into the next car. But as I shifted slightly, I realized there was a shape another person reflected in the window across the aisle. The problem was, no one was sitting there. I looked directly at the seat. Empty. Do not breathe loudly. I looked back at the window. The shape remained, faint but unmistakable. A figure, standing completely still. The man who had peeked into the next car was now sitting down, eyes wide, fists clenched. No one said a word. Everyone had heard it. The atmosphere had changed. The lights flickered once. It was shadowed, no. It was wrong, as if my eyes could not process it. He walked straight down the aisle, turned around, looked at us, and each step seemed to stretch longer than the last. Time felt off. He passed within inches of me. I did not breathe. I did not blink. They told me the route had only ever used 3 cars, and no such announcements had been made. He can see you now. The conductor working that night had not reported any issues. But I know what I heard. I know what I saw. When the lights flickered back on, he was gone. The door at the rear of the train was wide open, but there was nothing beyond it, just dark. Not night, not trees, just nothing. I felt the heat of him, or maybe it was cold. I honestly do not know. But not everyone was still there. The man who had spoken was gone. The woman's bag remained untouched. I stumbled off that train and have never ridden it again. The air in the car felt thicker, like it had become hard to breathe. No one moved. I wanted to reach for my phone, but my hands were shaking too much. Then, something changed. I did not hear a door open, but I saw the figure enter. The train began to slow again, grinding slightly like it was struggling to keep going. Not swaying with the motion of the train. Not moving at all. He looked back at me and shrugged, clearly puzzled. I laughed a little under my breath. The man in the middle had backed away from the window between cars. She had been right there, seconds ago. Her bag was still on her seat, jacket slung over it. I had not heard her move. I looked around again, the unease bubbling into real fear. Then the speaker came on again. There's something wrong, he muttered when I passed. I walked forward and looked through the connecting window. The next car too looked normal. A few empty rows, no people. I turned back. The woman who had been in front of me was gone, chalking it up to a glitch or maybe some weird prank. Still, the way the voice had spoken calm, cold, direct left a sour taste in my stomach. Attention passengers, it said with eerie clarity. Do not look at the man in car 7. He can see you now. That was it. A footstep. Not a normal one. It was heavy, deliberate, too slow, from the direction of the front. One step, then another, then nothing. Silence returned. My music had paused automatically, and for a long second, I stared at the speaker as if waiting for more. Car 7? That made no sense. There were only 3 cars on this train. I was sure of it. I had boarded at the front, walked past the second car, and found my usual seat in the third. We had pulled out of the last major stop 20 minutes ago, and since then, the city lights had given way to industrial sprawl, then darkness. I sat near the back of car 3, earbuds in, staring out the window as we rumbled through the night. I had taken this route 100 times before and never thought twice about it until the announcement. And I was sitting in the last one. It was a Wednesday night, and I was heading home from a late shift. The train was nearly empty. There was no lead up. I pulled out one earbud and looked around. The train slowed briefly, but did not stop. Outside, only blackness and the occasional blur of trees passed by. I checked my phone. No signal. That was not unusual for this stretch, but now it bothered me more than it ever had before. I tried to ignore it, telling myself it was nothing, until I noticed something odd through the window. A reflection that should not have been there. At first, I thought it was just me. I stood slowly, heart pounding, and stepped into the aisle. The other passengers were now visibly uneasy. I froze. Do not acknowledge the man in car 7. If he enters your car, do not move. Do not speak. I backed up until I hit the window. My knees felt weak. I glanced at the others. And then, a soft sound. We all stared ahead. He was tall, unnaturally so, with a long coat that looked wet, and a face I could not fully see. He stopped at the back of the car, and then the lights went out. For a moment, I thought I had blacked out. We rolled into the next station 20 minutes later. The lights were harsh, and everything looked normal again. I called the transit company the next day, and sometimes, late at night, I still hear that voice in my head. Do not look at the man in car 7.